What's essentially happening in Ukraine right now is it's a proxy war with Russia. We are fighting a proxy war with Russia. We're just using Ukraine as this weird buffer. We are giving the money. We are giving the military equipment. We are training Ukrainian forces, and that's enabling them to carry on this war against Russia. If I'm Russia, if I'm Vladimir Putin, I sit there and think, well, I'm not really fighting Ukraine. I'm really fighting the United States. And I don't just feel this way in this scenario. In Iraq, for example, since we're talking about Iraq, when Iranian General Soleimani would come in and he would blow up our service members, I didn't blame Iraq. I blamed Iran, because it was Iran that was doing that, or Iran that was funding it. That's the same thing that we're doing, giving all this money and this military equipment to Ukraine. We are the ones fighting this proxy war. I don't want my husband, for example, to die in a proxy war with Russia over a border dispute in Ukraine. I don't want anybody to be vaporized by a nuclear weapon over a border dispute between Russia and Ukraine. Are you kidding me? And that's where this is heading. This is heading to nuclear war. This is heading to conventional war between NATO and Russia, between the United States and Russia. And people oppose the war in Ukraine on all these grounds, and all of this is perfectly valid. But this is not the number one reason to oppose the war in Ukraine. The number one reason, the bigger reason that this war must end is because of what's happening between Xi Jingping and Vladimir Putin. This meeting between the two of them is unprecedented. This meeting where they are all buddy-buddy saying, oh, my friend, come to dinner. Let me dine with me at the Kremlin, is what Putin said to Xi Jinping. They're talking about strategic cooperation. They're talking about a world order. That should be our tip-off, those words, a world order. If Russia and China get together, then we face in our country for the very first time in our lifetimes an existential threat to America as the world's superpower, as the most powerful nation in the world. We could be unseated. And if we, as the world's superpower, if America is unseated, that doesn't just impact us negatively. America, as we know it, ceases to exist. And the ripple effects of that travel all around the world. People all across the globe will suffer and die if America is not the world's superpower. Russia can't do this on their own. They can't knock us off of our position as world superpower on their own, and China can't either, at least not right now. But if Russia and China get together, and remember the history here, Russia and China hate each other. Even during the Cold War, or before that, before the Cold War, during the sort of proliferation of global communism, Russia and China despised each other. They embraced different types of communism, Marxism, whether it was Leninism and socialism in the Soviet Union, whether it was Maoism in communist China. It was the same philosophy underpinned it, but they could never team up. Even as they were both individually trying to spread communism around the globe, they couldn't team up because they loathed each other. It is ingrained into their cultures and into their politics to dislike each other. So the fact that Xi Jinping, the president of China, the head of the Chinese Communist Party, and Vladimir Putin, a former KGB agent, they both were alive and active in politics during these decades of their countries hating each other. The fact that they're dining together, calling each other friends, and talking about cooperation should not only startle us in the West, it should make us face our own mortality. This is an existential threat to our nation because the war in Ukraine is poised right now to change, to alter the makeup of the world order that has existed since the end of World War II. If you combine China's economy, the amount of money that they have, and I guess the amount of money includes their resources like their people, and then you include Russia's geography and all of the energy resources that they have, and you combine those two things, then you have yourself a more powerful entity than the United States of America, with more capacity to control more people, with more influence over more countries, with more strategic placement around the globe than even the United States and her allies. And if you have China and Russia becoming allied with each other, the reason that they're doing that is not because they like each other. It's because they need each other, because they share one goal in common. And that is knocking the United States off of the pedestal as the world's superpower. And if they do that, it's not just because they want to be the most prosperous nation. It's not good faith competition. It's because they're imperialist in their own way, and they want control. Vladimir Putin wants control of territories that are former Soviet territories. Xi Jingping wants ideological control. He wants ideological control that he will use economic control to exact ideological control. Just like we talk about ESG. ESG is basically a copycat of the Chinese Communist Party's social credit score, where they use their social credit score to control their so-called private industry. Sure, private citizens can own businesses. It's not like the government owns everything in China, but the government controls everything through their social credit score system. If you don't adhere to those metrics, the communist metrics, how you are a good communist, then the Chinese Communist Party stops you from doing business. It's a means, this economic control is a means to ideological control. And if China and Russia get together, then they leverage this against the United States, and suddenly we are not as invincible as we've felt for our entire lives. Suddenly we aren't in a position where we just feel like we have moral superiority because we could be imperialists, we could conquer your nation, we could conquer half the world, but we don't, we choose not to because we're the good guys. Suddenly we don't have that control anymore. We don't even have that capacity. It's not an option. And suddenly our most powerful weapon, which is actually our economy and not our military, isn't the most powerful weapon anymore. Because we use our economy as a negotiating tool when we want other countries to do what we want them to do. We say, well, if you don't, we're going to impose these types of economic penalties on you. And other countries that rely on the American economy to sustain their own economy have to cave to what America wants, because if they don't, then we cut off their access to our economy, and that's an existential threat to their people. America does that all the time, as we should. That's the appropriate use of a strong economy as a tool of international negotiation. It prevents us actually from having to use our military. It should be the first line of negotiation, and it often is. But if we are no longer the strongest economy, and we make these demands from other countries, or these demands to other countries that they behave a certain way, or else we're going to cut them off from the American economy, and at the same time, China and Russia allied together make a similar threat and say, actually, we're going to cut you off from our economy if you don't do what we want instead of the United States, then the obvious choice for that country is going to be to cut off whichever option is a lesser part, a lesser impact on their, lesser negative impact, lesser harm on their economy, and it's going to be the United States. The United States is going to be the nation that's ignored. Our demands are no longer going to be met. Our allies might stick with us, sure, as long as they can, the ones who are our moral allies, but we have a lot of practical allies around the world. Allies that don't agree with us ideologically, they maybe don't even like us. Countries that we don't endorse what they're doing, but we are strategically partnered with them or strategically allied with them simply because we don't want them to be partnered with the other side. But at whatever point it becomes more advantageous for them to be partnered with the other side, why wouldn't they do it if they're not morally and ideologically aligned with us? All they need is a better offer. But right now, we are the ones who can make them the far and away best offer. But what happens if suddenly we're not making them the best offer? Hi guys, it's Liz Wheeler. Don't forget to watch my show, The Liz Wheeler Show, every night at 7 p.m. on the First TV. You can download the free First TV app, or you can visit thefirsttv.com/Liz and start watching today.